To be injured. This is NBC News Radio. What's in a name? Apparently quite a lot if you happen to be the future King of England. NBC's Chris Jansing reports on the naming of the new prince.
Just 24 hours after the world first glimpsed the baby Cambridge, he got a very grown-up name.
It's George!
George Alexander Louis.
Oh, that's a lovely combination, actually.
Ending a weeks-long guessing game.
I think a name matters an enormous amount in a royal, because what they're consciously doing is to fling back the memory, the imagination, sometimes hundreds of years.
George, the name of 6 previous kings, 2 of them immortalized by Hollywood.
Despite some splashy new marketing campaigns, Americans are drinking less soda. Coke, Pepsi, and Dr. Pepper all sold less carbonated beverages in the second quarter of the year in North America. Coca-Cola blames the sluggish sales on a cold, wet spring, but the declines continue a trend that's been seen for years. I'm Paige Hopkins, NBC News Radio.
Yes, we're here. Yes. Opening it as usual.
What a beginning.
I thrust myself on these girls. Frankie. Thank you, girls. Thank you, me. Thank you, you. It's me, Frank. It's you, who?
Judy.
Yes. We got Lori on board, too, as the co-host. We are here to talk about a couple of very serious topics here tonight for all of the powerhouse transmitter of WTAN radio. The show is called Beyond Normal. And what's your beef? Meaning you, the audience, has got to call in and start talking to us about these 2 big subjects here tonight. And, of course, the first subject is about the Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman trials. Zimmerman. Am I getting the name correct, Judy? I've been pronouncing
Zimmerman?
Zimmerman. And we'll also be talking about fraud, mortgage fraud, and securitization at 11:30 today. Judy, what do you do?
What?
You wanted the audience to know what you do, Judy.
Oh, what I do?
Yes, Judy.
I hold you up.
Yes, you do. And we host shows around the country, and we do TV and radio shows on the Internet. The call-in telephone number here is 727-441-3000, and also 1-866-826-1340. Been writing down the numbers for myself because I can't remember numbers because we got too much to talk about, and everybody's crazy. And Lori's on board here, too. Hello there, Lori, our co-host.
Hey, Frank and Judy. How are you guys doing tonight?
We're doing fine.
Great. How are you?
I'm doing okay.
Good. You ready?
We're ready.
Yes. Tell everybody who you are, Lori, what you do, and tell everybody how much of a genius you are.
Oh, thanks, Frank. Well, I don't know about that, but I'm a consumer credit consultant, and I help people who have issues with their credit try and resolve them. I call myself, a reality check for people who think of the terms of credit repair. I help them resolve their credit issues, and they're going to learn how to do that. So I'm involved a lot with real estate world, mortgage fraud world, all those types of things.
Correct. And you are not the little one here on the show. You are the co-host with us. We are the co-host to you. And we bring all these people together, all 2 to 7 million people here, WTAN 1340, stretching in 3 different states. And the topic on hand right now, we all have our different opinions on this. We all come from different angles. I come from an angle. Judy comes from an angle. You come from an angle. It's the Trayvon Zimmerman case that has taken on a little bit of new life here in the past 2 weeks across Florida and across the country. Judy brought something to my attention. I mean, this whole thing's just driving me completely nuts. And Judy brought something to my attention just a couple of days ago. Just fanned the whole thing again for me. What was it, Judy?
I'm hoping, Lori, that this is the last show that we do on this subject.
It's been beaten.
I'm as sick of it as you are and probably everybody else. But I just thought it was just amazing that he came out of hiding and all of a sudden, what a wonderful thing he did by rescuing these people who had an accident a couple days ago.
Where was the accident? Was it in Florida or was it somewhere else?
It was
in St. Pete.
It was in St. Pete.
I'm pretty sure.
No, I think it was where he lives. Sanford,
Florida.
I believe so. Let me get.
Lori, when you said it was in St. Pete, how did you hear about it?
I heard about it on another radio show, actually.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, supposedly an SUV overturned, and he stopped and rescued the people.
Now, was this in a major intersection? Because I'm finding this hard to believe, people, that it's so timed to this thing. I'm talking to you, the audience. This is called Beyond Normal and What's Your Beef? So I'm saying this is beyond normal, that this could possibly have reality have happened to this guy right after this trial. Girls, talk. I'm glued on this.
Well, it almost seems too coincidental, but I don't really believe in coincidences.
Okay, so what are you really saying?
I don't know. At the same time, you look at it and say, could it have been a setup? But who would overturn their vehicle, and how would the timing have all worked? So maybe he happened to be in the wrong place at the right time?
Does anybody have pictures of this? It happened, I'm just looking at it here. It says it flipped over on a road near Interstate 4 last week.
Interstate 4, not too far away from here. And Sanford, Cedric, how far away is Sanford from here?
Hang on, I'll tell you exactly.
Okay,
Give me 30
good.
seconds.
Good, fine.
It's at least 150 miles, something like that.
150 miles?
Yeah, that's where we catch the train.
Okay, so, if we all knew what his daily life was all about. Laurie just said exactly what's inside my heart here.
It's 132 miles.
It was close.
2 hours and seven minutes by car.
207, and then you get another hour and a half over to Miami. See, Laurie just said what was in my heart. So it was a setup. Yes, it's a setup!
Well, the thing that really fired fuel for me, too, or fueled fire for me, boy, I'm all right tonight. That's what happens when you start at 11 o'clock.
Yes, right.
Is because they were supposed to have a news conference today in Zimmerman's lawyer's office, but at the last minute they canceled because they were afraid to show up because of the backlash from the trial and all that.
Yeah, what are we talking about here? A week and a half from this thing, and I've got so many problems with this whole thing. I'm calling it white racism in Florida, that I got 3 major broadcasters on 3 major networks. I got Schnitt from WFLA, who's saying there is not one sign, one piece of evidence, one piece of fact that points to anything except that Trayvon was acting like a lunatic that night, and he just overtook George, and George had every right and policy in the world to come out of that car. I got Sean Hannity saying it's a defense mark, and although he wasn't supposed to come out of the car, it was still in self-defense, and all the facts pointed to it. Then I have Rush Limbaugh saying, People, it's a jury. Whatever they say goes. It doesn't matter what the facts are. It's that the jury said this. Now, I'm looking at these facts, Laurie and Judy, and I'm saying to myself that we all know neighborhood watch systems. They're all over the place. We have it at Sun City Center. Those people are not supposed to get out of their car at all. They're not supposed to come out at all. They're supposed to watch, observe. Everywhere I look, every community I see, I look into their policies to do with the neighborhood watch, and they're not supposed to come out of their car. Now, couple of these goons, right-wing goons, are telling me he was supposed to come out of his car. He's not supposed to come out of his car. So they're lying about this. That's what I'm seeing. And to me, that means there's intent by this guy to cause bodily harm. That's what he was saying in the back of his head.
Well, I'm not sure he intended to cause bodily harm, but I do think that he, is a hothead. Because did you hear this, Laurie, that the news came out that he had abused his wife and his ex-girlfriend and so forth?
This is Zimmerman?
So he had a hot temper to begin with?
I hadn't heard that, but I read up quite a bit, on the case, and it seems like the both of them had rage and aggression issues of some type.
Yes. And
while George Zimmerman may have been maybe trying to do the right thing, the police told him, not to pursue this guy, but by the same token, apparently there was a lot of crime in that community, and, he was the head of that task force trying to keep the community safe. I look at it and say, if it had been me, would I have, packed a gun and gone out and followed the guy? No, I would have stayed home and done what the police said and let them deal with it because it's their job. And I don't necessarily know that it was a race thing. Everyone likes to say that. I think basically had two hotheads who, ended up engaged in this battle. And it makes me think of, that old saying, two wrongs don't make a right. Well, two wrongs definitely made a wrong here. If you have two aggressive people, look what happened. But the truth is, none of us really know the whole truth, because the only two people who know the truth, well, one is not alive and one is.
And the one that is alive has got so many switchable facts here. It's extraordinary. He's right about saying that he was not told initially not to come out of his car, but he's still on the band radio talking to the dispatcher as he's starting to move his car. And they're saying, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I'm pursuing the guy. I'm following the guy." They said, No, back off. Back off now.
Right.
Now,
right.
To me, right there, he's got intent of some kind of a subconscious nature going on, and it's swirling around inside of his head. And there was audio verbiage with him saying, "Well, he's that typical kid. He's got the hoodie on. These guys get away with this all the time." So, to me, it's racism coming out because he's juxtaposing or knowing that the kid is black underneath and probably young. And I'm looking at this and I'm saying, I wish this wasn't in my mind, race in this guy's brain. But that's what it's really coming out as for me.
Well, the bottom line is that somebody's dead.
Yeah.
And they shouldn't be dead.
Exactly.
Okay, he shouldn't maybe have been out there by himself, but if he were walking, minding his own business, as the story goes, going from the store back to his friend's house without bothering anybody, then he shouldn't have been approached.
Exactly. Our telephone number here in the studio. On this, we need you right now. What's your beef on this? It's beyond normal. 727-441-3000. Repeat it again. 727-441-3000. Cedric is standing by for your phone calls in the studio. If you need the toll-free number, it's 1-866-826-1340. If you want to text it, you're too shy. You like the fingers moving on the text cell phones. You're driving me all crazy.
I
with
just
this.
love that.
Oh, you're driving me crazy with it.
Well, I want to ask you guys. Well, first, what I'd like to do, I pulled up the 2012 Florida statutes on the Stand Your Ground, and I just want to read it first and then ask your opinion.
Yeah, go ahead.
Great.
It says, a person who is not engaged in an unlawful activity and who is attacked in any other place where he or she has a right to be has no duty to retreat and has the right to stand his or her ground and meet force with force, including deadly force, if he or she reasonably believes it is necessary to do so to prevent death or great bodily harm to himself or herself or another, or to prevent the commission of a felony. So, I was discussing this actually with my other half earlier today in what constitutes, the stand your ground. How do you interpret that? What's your opinion?
My opinion is that I'm looking at 3 or 4 facts here that he's contradicting himself. He's saying to everybody that he had turned around and headed back to his car, and then the kid attacked him verbally and physically at the same time. I'm watching the documentary on this guy. He's talking to 2 police detectives in the location, and he's actually saying, I didn't turn around and start to walk back to my car. I still faced him, and the words that were coming out were nothing. He wasn't identifying himself as a hot dog vendor, a night watchman, a neighborhood watchman, the president of the United States, the PT Association, or a PR department for a record company. He wasn't saying anything. Yeah, this kid was looking at him from 15 feet away and a little bit closer and saying, "What are you doing looking at me?" And the kid said, "You got a problem." He said, "No, I don't have a problem." Then why are you standing there? And it just escalated from there. The kid got too excited, yes. But if I got somebody in front of me from 10 feet away and he's just looking at me and he's not identifying himself as a prospective or a representative of some legal entity or a neighborhood watch or something, I'm probably going to go crazy on his rear end too. I don't want to kill him, but I'm going to knock him down.
Do you think they were both aggressive towards each other and scared at the same time?
Yeah, they were. They were staring at each other down because they come from 2 different cultures. And there's anger in this world, and there's too much of everybody either doing something to get something done or not getting something done, or too much of everybody trying to do something in an extreme notion. This guy was out near this kid in an extreme notion. If you don't identify yourself and you're not supposed to be there and you're within that close vicinity of this kid and you're not even saying what you're doing, I'm watching you or something, you're just being there and just staring at him, to me that's violence inside of the head right there by being quiet at the same time.
Right. Right. Do you think that they were racially profiling each other?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think they were both doing it.
It could be. It could be. But as Frank said, I think it would have been just so simple if he decided to get out of the car, which he was not supposed to do. If he did approach him, then tell him who he was, why he was there, and ask him where he was going. He could have called the people, the friends, and said, is this your friend? It could have all been worked out in about 2 seconds. In
about 20 seconds.
Without
about
anybody getting hurt.
Yeah.
But, like you said, two hotheads and a lot of fear.
A lot of fear.
And it just got out of hand.
Exactly. We are at 15 and a half minutes. 15 and a half minutes past 11 o'clock. We are at WTAN Radio 1340. The blowtorch stretching all across South Florida into 2 other states as well. Hello, people on the website. All 7 million of you people. We are sponsored here by Buzzy's Essentials. I will say that again slowly. Buzzy's Essentials. He makes the soap that takes your body to heaven. Put it on your body, smell it, work it through your body, eat it if you want to. All is well. Now, if you go to buzzy'sessentials.com, that's BUZZYSSENTIALS.com, you will begin to see his email address, which is buzzy'sessentials@msn.com, and the telephone number.
Telephone number in just 1 second.
Scroll up to that website, baby. Scroll up, baby.
He caught me off guard
Come on,
here.
hit me with a piece of
That's right. Wake up, Judy.
Yeah, I know.
And text inside the studio.
I was getting ready to talk about the soap, to tell you the truth,
I know.
which I'm going to do in just 1 second.
Anyway.
Please call Buzzy at 727-542-3444.
Talk about the soap a little bit.
Talk about myself?
No, the soap. I said the soap. She's hearing subliminal messages. Zimmerman and Trehan are still here in the studio.
Yeah.
Yes, we'd like to welcome Buzzy's Essentials organic soap to the program. It's made with Dead Sea mud and Dead Sea salt. However, it is made in sunny St. Petersburg. It is made in small batches to ensure the quality and consistency of each batch. They are hand whisked and hand poured, so there'll be slight variations in the size, but only very slight. And unlike most commercial soaps, there are no harsh chemicals or dyes or colorants in these soaps, no artificial fragrances or preservatives or animal fats. It's just downright good for the skin, and we can...
And you've been using it. You've been using it on yourself, and you're feeling a difference already.
Absolutely. It is really great. I would really, really advise you to go to the website.
And tune it in and call up this guy and email this guy, too. We're also brought to you by Lori, and she's a credit consultation person, and this girl is the genius to my genius. She might even be beyond my genius because I've already built the building blocks. Now, her email...
I just know my subject.
Yes, I know, but you are a genius. And the email address for Lori is Lori Zook. Do I have your last name pronounced correctly?
Zook. Zoock.
Okay.
At gmail.com.
Let's spell it out again. Spell out your whole email address, Lori.
Sure. It's LAURIEZOOCK at gmail.com. And my website is Credit Education Consultants with an S at the end.com.
Right. And she will be honest with you that there is no credit repair. It's all a scam in this country. I knew it too when I met Lori. We put our powers together and confirmed that to each other. But Lori will show you the very tricky, magical, and technical ways of trying to deal with your credit repair and history and how to possibly still get it done. So she's a genius in all this. And we also are sponsored by Empire Metal Finishing. And you come through us at our toll-free number, 1-800-784-4279. Again, 1-800-784-4279. You're building your house right now in this great home recovery. if you are building it, even if you shouldn't be building it and you are building it, they do metal fabrication for your new home. Correct?
They sure do.
Yes. We're at 17 minutes past the hour, 11 o'clock. Call in right now. Give us your opinion on this. The show is here called Beyond Normal, and we're talking about something that's not too normal, very tragic, very, I think, very racist on both ends, but particularly about the guy who shot the guy. And one of the points in this whole trial is everybody on that right-wing side, and some of the other lunatics in this country said, see all the marks on the back of his head? That is prudent in keeping with the geographical placement of blood in open wounds on the back of his head. And then I'm watching this guy, Zimmerman, on video, and he's saying, no, my head didn't hit the ground grass. My head hit the cement, and he was pounding and pounding and pounding and pounding. He said this 5 or 6 times. And I'm looking at the wounds on the back of this guy's head, and there's no way his head was pounded. Unless he's built with kryptonite.
Oh boy!
Well,
I think the whole thing is just very sad and pathetic, and it just goes to show how the world has just, in my opinion, just become more difficult. Why do people hate each other? Because of their race or their color? I mean, to me, it comes down to you're good or you're evil, or you're indifferent in the middle, which still leans towards evil. You know, either you're going to be an honest person straight up front, or you're going to, be the exact opposite. It has nothing to do with what color you are.
I don't think it does. Do you?
No, I don't. And there have been a lot of, quite a few black people speak up lately about this whole thing, and they're getting pretty sick of it, too. Don't call me a black person. I'm a person. You happen to be white. I happen to be black, but I'm a human being. And let's just stop with the color.
It brings me back. I mean, I'm from the north. I'm from just New Jersey, just outside of New York City. Mm-hmm. And it brings me back to September 11th, which was probably the only time I can remember in my lifetime where the country really pulled together and no one cared about anything other than let's stick together as Americans, as the American people, and not all of this other stuff. What happened to that? What happened to morality? It seems to have just gone down the tubes.
Yes, it does seem like it's gone down the tubes. Now, you two are gendering or getting away or disflavoring or withdrawing away a tiny bit on racism here. I can respect that. I'm still looking at racism here to some degree, especially on Zimmerman's side, because I'm still looking at the fact that this guy was too much in his head a vigilante, period, overall, and he had a need to be a police cop and solve problems in a certain venom and a certain calmness. So, to me, he's still in this area, and he's not supposed to be out of the effing car. You're not supposed to be out. And somehow these media power brokers have convinced these major networks with the Rush Limbaugh, the Sean Hannity, and the Schnick guy that he was supposed to be out of the car. That was his purview in the policy. Show me where the policy of that company was that it was okay for him to be out, because I can't find it anywhere in my research.
Well, there wasn't any.
Right.
No, and even
he was just he was looking for trouble too.
Yeah, I think so. Even in our neighborhood, the security people aren't supposed to get out of the car. They're supposed to call the police if they see anything suspicious.
Right, and I
had to beg the security guy to come and help me get in the house one day, because he, if he would, break my screen or tear the screen out, I could always say, he did it and charge him money or something like that. He was very reluctant to even do that.
Right, and we know about that policy too, and we've researched other neighborhood home security and neighborhood watch groups. They're not supposed to do this just because this could happen. In the studio right now, it's 727-441-3000, 727-441-3000. Text-wise, the text cell phone is open if you want to talk that way. 609-209-0194. Text me right now your opinion. What's your beef on this? How do you go on this? What does it say about us all? What's wrong with us now? What's not wrong? What's not right and wrong? What is incomplete? What is evil? What is not evil? Why this should not be happening at all? We get too far away from each other most of the time, and then we get too close. This stuff, this garbage, this crap is happening.
Well, it is. And you know what, guys? It seems like over the years I've just watched it, people seem to become more about themselves. What's in it for them? What can they get out of the situation that will make them feel better? And in this case, you know what I'm saying? In this case, it was what could make George Zimmerman feel better.
Yeah, I do see that. He needed to get out of the car to feel a little bit big for himself. But I'm also thinking here, too, you get out of that car and you have any slight notion in your subconscious to fire that gun, you are going to be a national story. Now, supposedly you don't want to be that, but you just want to be the cop with aggression or calmness. So, again, some kind of a layering inside of his brain going on there, predisposed to this thing. He had this too much of an animal, a monster going on.
Oh, I'm telling you. Well, I hate to bring up the gun thing, too. That's a whole other controversy. But this is really getting out of hand. I live in a over 55 community, and I heard the other day that there's a lot of people traveling around in golf carts, right? And there were two guys inside the community. One was not driving to suit the other guy in another golf cart. He took out his gun.
Lori.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, he didn't shoot. But he had a gun with him in the golf cart, and he was just angry because the other guy was either in his way or wasn't driving to suit him or something like that. He drew his gun.
Right. And we're saying, we're saying to you people got to stop this.
That's insanity. Do you have to? I'm assuming you have to be licensed, correct, in the state of Florida to carry a gun. Is there any type of background check, including psychological?
Well,
no, there is not. As far as I know, there's no psychological.
There's no psychological, and since we have these 4 or 5 problems in the last 2 years around the country, this still is not. The powers that are in Washington, D.C. that flip over to the Florida legislatures and everybody else, they go on this 2 ways. Everybody should be self-defending themselves. Everybody, except kids under the age of 18. Everybody should be having a gun. The other part they go on is when you shoot, you must want to intend to kill because we don't want to see body parts around. We want you to see this person be eliminated. We don't care how close they were to you. As long as you could safely, predominantly in a mediocre fashion, prove to us and say to us that you thought your life was at hand here, you got to shoot to kill. So this is most likely
insane.
It's insane. Of course it's insane. You mix this up with the racist tinges that are still going on in some people's heads here. I'm looking at my white people out there, my friends, my business associates. I say, you people are crazy. You got to stop thinking like this. Serious.
I know.
It's got to stop carrying over. Telephone number here in the studio, 727-441-3000, 727-441-3000. National toll-free line. Get into us right now. It's 1128 National toll-free line, 1-866-826-1340. And the text line. Do I have a text here at all? Let's see. Let's see if anybody's called in with the text. 609-209-0194. Yes, got one text here from Jacksonville. How far is Jacksonville away from Sanford?
It's north. It's almost in another state. We know it's right on the border.
Yeah, it's right on the border. What did we say, about 2 hours away from Sanford or further?
Maybe about that.
Right.
I'm not sure.
Okay, it's a male, and his name is Adam, texting from Jacksonville. Says, do the overlapping powers and do the laws, the civil and the criminal laws, still hold same here in Jacksonville to Sanford at dealing with what the jury had to deal with the facts? What would you say is the
What does
answer?
that mean?
The person, well, the person is asking. It's just like any case. Are the laws overlapping? Are the laws the same?
Oh, the same.
That blend into a jurisdiction from one county or jurisdiction or state or city to another?
State law, right, Laura?
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, state law is state law, I think, regardless of county. And then you have federal law, which can sometimes override the state law, but it shouldn't matter what county.
Correct.
Yeah, I would think so, too.
I mean, I looked up the Florida statutes, was what I read off, was a Florida statute on the stand your ground. So that would be for all of Florida.
It would be. Okay, you would think so, too. Now, you and I did have a conversation in person before, too, and we confirmed to each other that these laws are changing from police to sheriff to judge. So things are changing rapidly within every couple of seconds, every couple of hours. So this makes this more of a dangling participle what's going on. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, and the other thing too is, it depends. I mean, everybody has their opinion. Even a judge has their opinion, which is why it's left up to a jury to make those decisions. But the judge does instruct the jury, so you have to hope that you have a fair and impartial judge, which of course you don't always have. Exactly. So you always kind of wonder what really goes on in the background, in those instructions and things like that. And I don't know what necessarily would be the motivation for that, but everything to me seems to go back to money and big business. And how much can I get? And people, are in certain things for power or for respect. So what's the motivation? We all have different motivations because we all have different psychological profiles.
It is correct. We are at 11:30 right now. Lori's our co-host, Frank and Judy right here, WTAN. We have our man on the line right now. Can you introduce him, Lori, and tell the great audience here what we're dealing with at this point?
Bruce, do I have you with us?
Bruce, hello.
Yeah, you got me with you.
Yeah, well, the subject that I would like to cover for the next half hour is the other one, which everyone, is probably still angry about, which is the mortgage crisis and securitization and so forth. And, obviously we all know what's been happening across the nation, but especially in Florida with the amount of mortgage fraud, foreclosures, what the banks did with the robo-signing, you have MERS that supposedly lost all the notes. You've got the lawyers that work on the monthly retainer instead of billable hours, and they take the money from the homeowner, instead of the homeowner paying the bank. And you've got the bank doing loan modifications, but not in writing, so they're still taking the money, and the whole thing has just blown up and backfired. And, we hear about these things all the time, but I think a lot of times people don't understand, they hear who has the note, how is it securitized, and I know that federal courts have ruled whoever holds the note can foreclose on the property, but the biggest thing I think most people don't understand is securitization of the loan. So, Bruce, I know you know a lot about the subject. So can you try to explain, just for, the regular listener, how are mortgages securitized? I mean, if we could talk about it from the beginning. I go and I buy a home through a mortgage person. What happens from there?
Well, what happens is, you go to a settlement table, you sign a bunch of documents and the note and the mortgage and, the money transfers, and then the question is, what happens to that mortgage? The first thing is that and I've heard it for years and years and years when people talk about, such and such bank, the problem was that all these mortgages and all these notes are with one bank or another and they're foreclosing. The truth of the matter, there's a couple truths going on here. First of all, from a securitization standpoint, the mortgages are divided up into 30 pieces. Every year 30. Is basically, and the technical term is called a tranche. And it just means it's like every year's worth of payments is divided up and then it was sold off as a piece to a trust. So the interesting thing is all these underlying mortgage companies or the underlying, the major banks who are involved in all this, became the servicing agents for all of these little pieces that got divided up and put into these trusts and then separated and sold all over the place. They were divided up, put together, repackaged, and they're just all over the world is where they are.
And there's some of these pieces, Bruce. Tell me if I'm wrong, because I've been studying this like crazy, and I've been written books on economics. Some of these pieces were based and rebased on fluctuations of yields and dividends paid out and inflation rates that were not taking place, that were taking place, and then compounded to that of fraud to fraud to fraud. Am I somewhere in the ballpark here?
Well, you're at least in the parking lot on that.
Yeah. I'm just in the parking lot. I'm just in the parking lot on
Sorry,
that.
you set yourself up. I couldn't help
That was
myself.
complex what I said, and I'm just in the ballpark.
That was good.
So, yeah, it's a very complex, convoluted situation. And it all goes back to, if I remember correctly, and I read the book, but it's been a while, back to like the 70s when Paul Volcker was head of the Treasury.
He's also head of the Federal Reserve.
Federal Reserve,
right?
One of the big places. He's head of the Federal Reserve,
Big place.
and the whole concept of securitizing was a way to increase the money that was available for mortgage loans and to get it out of the hands of the local banks. And so the idea is that they could go through this process, divide it up, securitize it, spread the risk around. Way back when, that all worked out fine, and then they started spreading it, all over the country. And then I remember way back when, and at one point in time, I was a financial planner. We'd tell clients, "Hey, you can get a pool, you can get a tranche of mortgages, this sort of time period, this sort of interest rate." And the interesting thing is, way back in that time period, people would say, "Well, what if the mortgages get paid off early?" Well, then you get your cash back. Your interest rate won't be as, your interest income won't be as high, but you'll get your money back. And wherever interest rates are, we can start over and go find something else. The part of the problem that happened, when the whole real estate market collapsed, was obviously loans were given to people that shouldn't deserve them, that were convinced, you take out this money and don't worry, it'll all go up and everything will work out, and in the end everything will work out for everybody. That was at the borrower level.
You're talking about this past cycle, correct?
This past cycle.
Okay.
Yeah.
The
whole securitization got so far so convoluted and so screwed up that all these little pieces got so spread out that literally nobody knew. First of all, nobody knew where anything was. And if anybody, the two books that I read, I probably read about a half a dozen books, the two about what happened, but the two that jumped out were Mike Lewis's book, the guy that wrote Moneyball, also wrote the book, I think I have it correctly, The Biggest Trade Ever. Or maybe he wrote The Biggest Short. It was he wrote The Big Short, and then there was another book written by called The Biggest Trade Ever. And both of those authors looked into what was going on, the people that were blowing, not necessarily blowing the whistle, but were raising questions about what was happening. And the powers that be, and when I say the powers that be, I mean all the way from late at night. God, the guy who used to be the head of the Fed before Bernanke.
That would be
Greenspan.
Greenspan, correct.
Yeah, that's how late at night. I've read like a half a dozen books about him.
I think the big difference between these two cycles and why we're in such an incredible, horrific mess now, the 70s cycle, which you just did say parts of, was correct.
Yeah.
However, there was not very much secrecy going on in
the 70s.
Right. There was just too much inflation, over 6 to 7%, and that started to circle around other commodities and goods and services. And
right.
The leadership from the White House wasn't good, and everybody was trying to get on Carter because he had a tongue twist going on. So you get here into the 2000, and there's an actual master plan that's going on to keep everybody thinking it's down to 1 to 2% inflation, where you're probably at about 8 to 9% inflation, and then for some reason, these powers within Washington and this New World Order plan, or whatever you want to call it, convinces itself that they know for sure, and they did, that if you start handing this money to a billion trillion bunch of idiot adults in this country and just say, take it, and literally we're going to brainwash you into thinking you don't have to pay this back, and we don't want you to pay it back, and we know you don't want to pay it back either. We're either going to silently say this to you, and you're going to figure it out, or we're going to say it to you in the mortgage business, and they did.
Right,
Well,
right. So it looks like it was actually planned, because how could all
No. That's the
Let
me stop. That's the conspiracy theory.
Well,
You know?
it worked to do with the figure.
Yeah, but there's an underlying problem that existed.
Tell me, because
Okay, the underlying problem was that all these trusts, all these mortgages and pieces that got put into trust and then got resold, did not go through, most of them did not go through the brokerage system, so there was a record of what was going on. So when Greenspan, and he's been quoted as saying this in a lot of different places, when he said, all real estate is local and we don't have to worry about this. And at some level, the guy was truly a genius. The information he knew and could, spit out at his fingertips, he didn't need to get briefed on. But the problem was, because so much of this stuff didn't go through the brokerage houses, nobody had any records. And if you don't have records, you can't look at trend lines, and you can't look at all kinds of other analysis to say, oh, by the way, all those mortgages that we did in Las Vegas and in Florida that ended up all over ended up by investors all over the rest of the country or the rest of the world. Well, we don't know about that, so therefore we can't measure it.
Okay, that tracking is correct, but you got to go back into the other word you just said there.
Which is?
We're thinking, or we're knowing, this is going to be paid back individual to individual, 90% of this. You're looking at a country that just came off of Clinton economics, and Clinton couldn't tell you why he had a recession at the end, because there was too much inflation built up around bonds, notes, treasury notes, and commodities, and the milk in your supermarket. So he was lying at that point too. We got into Bush, and a billion leadership comments from this guy Bush is, I'm gonna expire every social liberal bill that comes over my desk, and even if they threaten me in Congress, I'm still gonna do it. And he went completely the opposite way, and he put money into people's hands that were selfish. I mean, you're looking at me, I'm looking at you, Bruce, and you're saying these people weren't selfish, and I'm around.
Oh, it's not a matter of whether the public was selfish, but back up a little bit. Let's just throw out a few things. First of all, if we go back and realize that the last part of Clinton's administration, he got to the point where there was the surplus. And one of the things I remember very clearly was the concern that, oh my God, Greenspan is going to end up terminating the need for 30-year treasuries, and all of a sudden, all the benchmarks that the financial industry was using from the bond market to measure a whole lot of other stuff was going to disappear. Now, Greenspan, literally, I remember reading this somewhere. Greenspan went to Clinton and Greenspan convinced Clinton to leave the surplus in there, because that was going to be the money that was going to be necessary to deal with the Social Security and the Medicare, problem that was down the road. So the funny part, you got Greenspan, the Republican, convincing Clinton, the Democrat, just leave this money alone, leave it in there. We're going to need it for the future. Like, let's put savings aside, because it's going to come. If we don't have it, it's going to come back to haunt us. So what happens? Bush gets in office. The younger Bush gets into office, convinces everybody, oh, well, we need to give all this money back because the public knows better to do with the money than the government does.
Why? Where's the convincing fact that the public ever knows better than the government? The government stinks, and so does the public.
Well, there you go. They both stink. And here's the interesting concept. And I saw this, for whatever reason, looked this up, a month or so ago. There are a little over 320 million people in this country. Out of that number, there's about 140 million people that report a W-2 to the government. And out of that 140-some million, 75% of them make less than, see if I can remember the number, less than $45,000 a year is what's reported on their W-2.
Correct.
Okay, so the interesting thing was, remember what the history was. Bush Jr. gets into office, convinces the Congress to give this money back, And then when 9/11 comes along, part of the solution he puts out there is, oh, we're not going to let anybody tell us, to disturb our way of life. And to prove it to everybody, we need the public to go out and buy stuff.
Okay.
And the underlying underlying argument always comes down to all these things that, if the public had the money, if they could make the decisions, and they're better off. Neither one of them are competent. But the interesting thing is the consumption. If you look at our economy, 70% of the economy is consumption. So literally,
not any
we
longer,
complain
man.
about all the time, like people aren't saving money, and we need to give it to the rich, etc. And ultimately, it comes down to most of the economy is based on people buying stuff.
No, it used to be. Now it's no longer.
Still is.
No, 93% of it is based on debt. We're a debt-driven economy now.
But the debt is there to buy stuff.
Yeah, but you have to buy. Yeah, you can.
They do, but they buy it on credit.
Yeah, they buy it on credit. It's
right, but
13.
We haven't convinced people to stop buying it.
Well, you can't. I mean, you can't. You still got to go buy out
because
milk and
everybody's
electrical.
obsessive compulsive. They have to have more than everybody else has.
Right.
But that's part of it. But look at every ad that's on TV. It's like, go buy this, and we can get it cheap, and you can get this discount.
Okay.
I always love the argument when they talk about, like, why are all the jobs gone and overseas, and why can't we bring the jobs back? It's because, something? And you think about the wages that get paid in China and the wages that get paid here. Is anybody, just as a simple example, do you know anybody who's willing to go out to buy a 50-inch TV and spend $10,000?
I don't know anybody who's willing to pay for it anymore, Bruce. And there's the problem. Well, here's the two sides of your ghosts.
Yeah.
You got Clinton and the Federal Reserve saying what you just said, but they still lied to each other. They were saying there was 1% to 2% inflation. You can't do any of that under 8% to 9% inflation. It just feeds on top of each other, and nobody's going to pay for it. And the Chinese are going to back off, and that's why they had a recession then. You got Bush. Bush is saying, put the money back into these people's hands. That's not quite what he was saying. Put it back into the hands, and I know for sure 90% of these people are not going to pay it back. We want to collapse the system. We want to put the bailouts on top of the corporations and get 93% of the people to 95% of the people in this country poor, and they got it done. You want to call it a conspiracy? It's a mean son of a gun plan. And it happened.
Right, and you know what? Actually, I agree with you on that part, Frank. I mean, why didn't any of the banks, why didn't any of these people who robo-signed, any of these banks actually get sent? I mean, sure, they had to pay back some money, some of the banks, but how come all these people?
But Lori, you're talking about
there were people who actually owned their homes and lost their homes due to bank error, but there were so many stories. It happened so many times. The whole situation is just out of control. It just seems like there's way too much government.
Yeah, there's way too much.
Well, I mean, that's all part of it. And there's this. Here's the interesting teeter-totter. Take a look at this. On one hand, the part of the argument is the government's trying to run everything and be in charge and tell everybody what to do, and then we turn around and say, but the government is incompetent and can't get anything done. So how can they be so efficient and be able to run everything? On the other hand, they can't get anything done.
Because
it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense that you get a private industry and a government industry that can't do it. They both can't do it at the same time. They have little fluctuations in between, but you can't. Either side is responsible. I got people all over the place. It's incredible what's going on. We got 10 minutes in front of 12. We got a special guest. Bruce is on the line right now talking about this whole fraud situation, securitization. We are in the studio at 727-441-3000. Again, 727-441-3000. We are brought to you by Buzzy's Essentials, the soap for your body. Contact him at Buzzy's Essentials at msn.com. We are also brought to you by Lori Zook, LAURIEZOOCK at gmail.com. She will take care of your credit solutions. And we are brought to you by Empire Metal Finishing. Take care of your metal fabrication in your new home, the home you shouldn't have, because here we go, Bruce. I'm looking at $13.2 trillion in consumer debt. I'm looking at $17 trillion in government debt. The countries around the world are saying, go shove it up your nose. We're not doing
they're not.
Oh, they're all filing back. They're all going bankrupt.
They're not.
Yeah,
First of all, wait a minute. Stop. There's two things I have to put out on the table. One, and I love that statistic that everybody throws out: $17 trillion worth of debt. Now, the interesting thing is, and the interesting question is, what do you think the largest component of that $17 trillion is? Who do you think owes? Who holds the largest piece of that $17 trillion worth of debt?
Well, you could tell me one entity, I'll tell you another, and there's no proof on either side anymore.
Well, who do you think owns the biggest piece?
Probably me when I'm sleeping.
No.
Who are you saying is owing this? Nobody's holding this anymore.
Well, actually, it does. Social Security.
That's not happening anymore.
Has lent that money to the regular government.
No, that's been stolen, man.
No. It's an accounting issue.
No, it's not.
The money goes in. The money gets collected by Social Security. They lend it to the government, so Social Security has a note receivable from the government. So that's where the largest part of that debt went.
They can't do it. We got a caller on the line who wants to join in right now. Caller, hello. Talk loud, caller.
Hello.
Hello. What's your name?
My name's Chris. How you doing?
Oh, good. Well, lend us into this topic here, Chris.
My question was about the Federal Reserve. You guys were going into earlier, and that's a private institution, correct?
What institution are you talking about?
Federal
Reserve.
Federal Reserve, supposedly private. I think it's a mixture of criminal, private, and government, and the Vatican around the world.
Yeah, I guess I kind of agree with you. I don't really trust them at all, and whenever I listen to Bernanke talk, it just seems like I just don't believe him. I think he's pumping money into the system, and most of it gets to his banker friends, and it's kind of upsetting to me every time I hear him talk.
Bruce, you want to make a comment to that?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the history of what the Federal Reserve has done, they have been the bank of last resort to step in and try and calm the markets when there was some sort of potential run or potential issue. I mean, when 9/11 took place, Greenspan stepped in and sort of calmed the markets down by saying, hey, we're going to do whatever's necessary. Did he ever have to do anything? No, but he stepped in. You go back further in history, there were other times when, before the Federal Reserve existed, boom and bust cycles were even more frequent and even more violent than the ones that any of us have ever lived through.
This boom and bust wasn't even an 8.5 on the recession scale. This was somewhere between 30 and 70% recession depression. We're covering up so much in this country because we don't want to look like fools around the world. Plus, this government is stealing from itself and pumping so much money, criminal bailout money, to these corporations. It's scary. If you had put 10 to 20% on the streets, this would have turned out noticeably better. But
he's pumping out $85 billion in the market every month.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what? I mean, won't the end of that boom and bust look pretty bad?
Yeah. I mean, I don't see this thing showing up anywhere. I really don't. Now I'm hearing 8.3% increase in new home sales, and I'm going, oh, really? If you got 92% of the people are in debt, an incredible 8,000 to 1.2 million in debt, how do you have new home sales like this unless you fake it?
Well, a lot of that money's going into that market. A lot of the Bernanke money.
Yeah, well, it's going into private funds that nobody can really track this thing. I'm seeing the market go up under 4 or 5 years under Obama, and I'm looking at these stocks, and I'm saying this is not making any sense to me at all. It's not adding up.
The banks are still holding millions of properties.
Well, actually, Lori, that's not true. There's a really interesting underlying issue that deals with the real estate market, and the debt, and the banks. If you remember back in 2008, the market collapsed, and everybody said all the banks had said it was the worst quarter we ever had. And then the following quarter in 2009, it was the best quarter they ever had, because there was an arrangement made between the accounting profession, the banks, and the government. And what they did is they came to the decision that instead of taking those loans and trying to mark them down to market, and the whole concept, and that's a basic accounting thing, that if you buy, say, for example, you buy IBM for $100 beginning of the year, and at the end of the year it's $50, you got to mark it down to $50 and reflect the change on your books. Well, usually that's what they would have done with the loans. But what they said, and they tried to do that at the end of 2008, they then turned around and said, no, as long as you keep the loans on the books, we'll just keep them there at face value. We're not going to mark them down. And so when the new law got passed in Florida about trying to, quote, accelerate the foreclosure process, there was this belief that, all these people that had bad loans were trying to just delay the process. The truth of the matter is, it was the banks that have delayed the process, because as long as they kept the loans on the books, they didn't have to convert it from a loan to a piece of property. And once they convert it to a piece of property, they write down the loan, whatever the loss is, and then they have this piece of property on the books. And the controller of the Treasury, the regulations require that banks can only have so much in the way of property in the equity section of their balance sheet. And when that happens, they get too much, they got to unload it. So it's literally been them that have been running this slow pace of not converting these foreclosed properties from debt into property and getting resold, and that's what's been slowing it up. But everybody thinks, people figured it out and think, well, we can just sort of live forever, and these properties do not have to pay the mortgages. But it's not because the individuals were really pushing the issue. It's because the banks really didn't want to push the issue.
They didn't want to admit their losses.
As long as they kept the stuff on the books as a loan, they didn't have to worry about the write-down. And the other part of that is a lot of those banks went out and bought the CDOs that Paulson made all his money on, because he had to sell his to them, and they turned around and used those CDOs to collect on the bad debts, so they got a lot of their money back.
Lori, get in on this, because this is not adding up to me.
My one thought, though, too, is, if it's an investment property and they're trying to keep it on the books and stretch it out as long as they can, the other issue I see is once it gets past the 5-year statute of limitations for debt collection, then they can't come after you for that money.
And that's why they're all pushing.
Actually, if it's in litigation, that might not be true. It may be delayed.
Yeah.
You guys are talking very intelligently, but all this delay is going on in a lot of sectors, and we're all still pushing off leveraging to do with what looks like to be profit, to do with 3/4 of a country that is poor. Literally, technically, this all doesn't work. It's got to be wiped out, start all over again, and start over with a flat tax. And then you got to hope in the first 2 months to 6 months everybody behaves themselves too.
No, the 80-20 rule will always be part of this. 20% of the public's always going to own most of the assets. You can't just wipe it out, because it would just be catastrophic throughout the world.
Yeah, it'll be
and literally part of what Bernanke has done with all these purchases, they've reinflated the real estate market, they've reinflated the stock market, because the belief is if there is wealth, if there's a feeling of wealth by the public, then they will then say, my stocks are up, my property's up, now we can go out and buy more stuff. And that'll keep the economy going. So
it'll keep it going on a relatively weird and very twisted fake scenario here.
Absolutely, but that's what they want to do. Is they want to keep
it
going. Let me ask you.
We got 1 minute left, Lori. Go for it.
Okay, one quick, simple question. Why don't the banks themselves, I know some do, but why don't most banks just finance the properties themselves without securitization?
Why take on the risk?
I don't know. I think back to It's a Wonderful Life, George Bailey, Pottersville.
No, it's too financially complicated. Why not just move the money through, securitize it, get fees, make the revenue, and not have any risk to worry about?
Because you're only going to be left with 2,000 or 2 million people left in this country. That's what's going to happen. That's what we're aiming for here on this whole platform.
We'll see.
Oh, no, we already did see. It's happening, babe. There's too many murders going on related to this, too. We are down to a couple of seconds here. It's the Frankie V, Judy, and Lori TV radio show. Bruce, thank you very much, man.
My pleasure.
Chris, too.
And yes, and when you go to bed tonight, Bruce, you'll have nightmares of chocolate. That's associated with me.
Those aren't nightmares. Those are just dreams from heaven.
That is true. We'll see you again next Wednesday from 11 p.m. to 12 midnight. It feels like, what, 7 o'clock at night right now?
To you, maybe.
Yes, to me, maybe. It always does. Thank you, Lori, the co-host from heaven.
Thank you.
And Judy by my side, and me by my side here, too. Thank you, everyone. Cedric in the back of the engineer booth. And he's going to give me a countdown of a couple of seconds left on his fingers. And I will tell you, we'll be back again. Tune in to frankthemouth.com 24/7 on the Tan Talk Radio Network 1340 AM. Good night.
When I looked up, I saw a friend, hey Frankie. Do you remember me? You looked at me and then I blushed, 'cause I remembered I loved you so much way back when. We were friends, going together, but then you left me.
WTAN, Clearwater, Tampa Bay. WDCF, Dade City, Tampa Bay. WZHR, Zephyr Hills, Tampa Bay. Listen.